there. Good evening, everyone. It is, what day is this? November 2nd, 2020, Monday. This is Owen Sound City Council. We had a closed session starting at 6:15 p.m. During the closed session, Council reviewed minutes from closed session meeting of Council held on September 14th. Council reviewed minutes from the closed session of Owen Sound Municipal Nonprofit Housing Corporation meetings held on February 18th, September 19th, 2020, and from the special closed session of Owen Sound Municipal Nonprofit Housing Corporation meeting held on June 25th, 2020. Council also discussed one matter regarding personal matters about an identifiable individual and regarding a matter which Council may hold a closed meeting under another act, 239 sub 2 sub G being section 35 sub 4 sub B of the Police Services Act respecting neighborhood safety concerns, and no direction was provided. So we're now starting in the open session. First of all, calling for additional business. Staff, anything additional that's not on the agenda?
Mr. Mayor, there's no additional business from staff.
Thank you. Council? Councillor Tamming?
I have two things. Some very good news. I was speaking to a local developer. I'd like to share that with council later. And second, a shameless plug for the Tom.
Good. Thank you. Councillor Thomas?
I have one item on poppy sales.
Anyone else? Seeing none, that cuts my list down by at least two. So I'll have a couple of things, three things to cover. Down to number 5 in our agenda. Does anyone have a pecuniary interest with anything they wish to disclose? Councillor Thomas.
Thanks, Your Worship. I'm going to declare a non-disqualifying interest in agenda item 12B, Enhanced Neighborhood Safety Update, in accordance with Part 1 of the Code of Conduct, Avoidance of Conflicts of Interest. The nature of my interest and the reason why the interest does not prevent me from making an impartial decision in this matter is my wife and I own a rental property near the house in question.
Great, thank you. At number 6, we're looking for the confirmation of minutes of the closed section of regular council meeting held on September 14th. You'll probably have it.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Dodd, that the minutes of the closed session of the regular council meeting held on September 14th, 2020 be printed as adopted. As printed, be adopted.
And all in favor? That is carried. Next is minutes of regular council from October 19th.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Dodd, that the minutes of the regular council meeting held on October 19th, 2020 as printed be adopted.
And all in favor? And that is carried. Number 7.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Dodd, that City Council now move into Committee of the Whole to consider public meetings, deputations and presentations, public question period, matters arising from correspondence, reports of city staff, consent agenda, committee minutes, matters postponed, motions for which notice was previously given, and additional business.
Great, thanks. All in favor? That is carried. So we're now in Committee of the Whole. At number 8 in our agenda, we have no public meetings. At number 9, we have a deputation from Jamie Walpole of Owen Sound Festival of Northern Lights. There we are. Welcome, Jamie.
Good evening, everybody. Can you hear me okay through this mask?
Yep.
Excellent. Well, thank you for having us here. We'll give a short presentation on the Festival of Lights, what happened last year and what our plans are for this custom year and what we're going to be doing going forward. Okay, so this is our 33rd year, and we continue to be very popular in the community. We're volunteer run with a lot of community sponsors and partners. We've actually become inspirational to other winter light festivals. We get a few calls a year. Well, how do you do it? How do you get your custom displays? How do you run your sponsorship programs? So it's makes you feel good when people are using you as a template. Last year, and every year, we continue to see more and more visitors from further distances. We're not necessarily targeting our marketing for that, but word of mouth, friends coming up from other cities to see their family up here. Our crowds keep growing. So, 2019 in review. Just a few of our displays there. One of the displays in that picture is a little harder to keep in line than the others.
The fish?
It was, yeah, the fish. There's a couple pictures of our winter walking path at Harrison Park. That was new last year. We'll get into that a little bit later. 2019, it was a success. We found that we had the largest crowds yet. Our opening was well attended. And during the 7-week festival, we had over 7,000 cars come through Harrison Park. As I mentioned, our visitors continue to get from further and further away, from the GTA area, Listowel, Kincardine. And what they say is it's a family night. They will just come up here. We are the destination. They want to see the lights. They'll grab dinner and spend the night in Owen Sound. Along with that, our greatest sponsorship and donations to date happened in 2019. It was a strong year. We introduced in Harrison Park, in the campground area, what we called a winter wonderland walking path, and found that it was busy every night with people walking and enjoying. There was probably about 30, 40 displays back there. A few vehicles tried to enjoy it as well, but we had to make sure that that was blocked off. We held a couple of really good events. Our opening was well attended, and Festival in the Park was well attended, and those events were run with assistance from volunteers throughout the community. We had a couple hockey teams that helped us those nights. People just signed up. So it was a good feeling of community. In 2019, we also continued to try and simplify. Years ago, we would put up snow fence to protect the displays and reduce vandalizing. This year, we went up with rope fencing, and very pleased to announce that we had little to no vandalization. So what that did for it is it made it feel warmer, easier to see the displays, and we got a lot of positive feedback on it. We also had a scavenger hunt. Scavenger hunt was good for a couple of reasons. One, it gave people a reason to go see all of the displays, fill in the information and enter into a contest, but it gave us some information about where we were drawing people from. And as I mentioned, we were drawing them from a lot from Grey Bruce, but an awful lot from around the area too. Something unique in 2019 is we had an engagement. A couple reached out, or I should say the gentleman reached out to us and said that he was thinking of getting engaged, and their first date was to Owen Sound to see the lights 3 years before that, and he thought it would be a great idea to come back up here and ask him to marry her. So Sandy, he contacted us, and what we were able to do is we actually made a heart display and a sponsorship sign that said, "Will you marry me?" with her name on it, and told him we had people cross-wiring with communicators and everything like that, saying exactly, go here, go here, go here. And his engagement was successful. It was quite the hit, so I was very pleased. We had another engagement as well. Another one was down in Harrison Park, and somebody went with our displays and then took some of their own little candles and made a little bit of a walkway. So I guess romance is in the air. That's good to see. We also had a couple requests that meant a lot to us. about memorials. This family had this display made by a local artist for a local teacher at a local school who was at hospice and probably didn't have long. So they contacted us and said, is there any way that we can get a display made, put up quickly, and we can arrange to have her come down and see it? So our team got out there in the rain and put that beautiful display out. And she got to see it the day before she passed. So sometimes things remind you what we're doing here. So. The community, always a strong supporter. You'd be amazed at who will help out and what they'll do for you. That's a fine elf costume. Excellent shoes. And it was successful, but there always are some challenges. Something that happened last year, which was great, and we look forward to having it continue this year, and it has, and going forward, is the city staff and the festival volunteers gelled, and it was a true team. Everybody worked well. There was ideas going back and forth, and the efficiency was improved, and it was a pleasure to do it. So kudos to those teams. We had to, light displays have a shelf life. They're out in the cold. They're used rope lighting, and rope lighting has a life. We had to rebuild 40 displays almost from scratch. Let's tear it down, put it back together. And that was hard. What is happening is they're all seemed to be happening because they were all purchased around the same time, so they're all starting to fade out around the same time. But we got them fixed and we got them out. As I mentioned earlier, we are starting to see some organizations are reaching out and saying, hey, how can we help you? We had a hockey team who helped us with event security. We had another hockey team that helped us put out our fencing. So it is truly a community event. It is getting harder to get volunteers. There's so many organizations that need help and some organizations that truly benefit from the help that they get. We always take a step back and say that people are spending time at the hospice in some very important organizations. So volunteering isn't disappearing, it's just dispersing a bit. Okay, so 2019 financially, this is our revenue. This is our revenue streams broken down. Municipal support is support provided by the city. Sponsorships are people, businesses, organizations that want to sponsor a display. Donations are people who just want to donate without a sign, kiosk donations, busing. And we have fundraising events consisting of trivia night and festival in the park. Last year, our sponsorships were $2,000 over the year before, $4,000 over the average that we've been having over the last few years. Our donations were the most ever by thousands. Expenses. Opening day and special events, 10,000. Volunteer appreciation was a little lower last year because we were going to do something when the weather warmed up in April. I can't put my finger on why we couldn't do that. Advertising and marketing, Payroll expense, and there's a little bit more of a summary where we can see the actual versus the budgeted. Administration and display operations and maintenance. Displays, with the number of displays that we needed to repair, drew an awful lot of costs in that area. So if we put those together, you can see our economic picture. Our operating funds, our revenue, was greater than our expenditures. So we ended up with a surplus of 16,675. So I'm going to put the next slide up. That shows the budget and the actual and the difference. So municipal remained the same. Sponsorship. When we built the budget, we wanted to be aggressively selling our sponsorships, and we had dreams of the amazing things we could do. When it came time to do it and put the horsepower to get it done, it was more of a challenge. So we were not as successful at it as we envisioned we could be. Still, higher sponsorships than ever, but not as successful as we budgeted. Donations were very strong. We found that ever since we put the light tunnel in Harrison Park, the amount of cars have gone up every year. I think that's a big draw. People like to see the big light tunnel and the big displays of the dinosaurs. It's a good focused area. Fundraising events, again, we did well, but short of what we budgeted. Under the expenditures, opening day, we were under budget. Volunteer appreciation, under budget. Advertising and marketing, we focused and we took some good advice and targeted, and it worked well. Payroll expenses is sort of the one that throws the number off there. We had our festival administrator leave in May, beginning of May. And with discussions with her, with discussions with the board, it was questioned whether we need a full-time position during the summer. Can we leverage those skills? Or is it the festival better off to hire more of a contractually seasonal position? So we tried that, and that accounts for that savings. Administration, we reached out, we saved some money by renegotiating some contracts. Display operations and maintenance, as I said, we were above budget due to the amount that we had to do. So that is exactly where the money came in and the money went out. So going forward, in 2020, the lights are on. The lights will be on in 2020. We talked to public health and back and forth and figured out what could we do it safely, and we put together a good plan. There is an incredible amount of excitement that the lights are going to be on. I think people really need something this year. Yeah. So the displays will be downtown and at Harrison Park like every year. The Winter Wonderland walking path, it will be lit this year as well. We've developed and had reviewed by public health a COVID plan, response plan, to ensure the visitors are safe to come and see our displays. And that we are making sure that our volunteers are safe while working. Oops. So our initial COVID response plan to get us back in the workshop. We use physical distancing. We use small scheduled volunteer groups. Signage and PPE are available. And we only started getting back into the workshop in September, which meant for a tight timeline. As far as the festival itself, the design that we've come up with is placing the displays a little further apart. We're designing a route, and let me make sure it's clearly marked, to try and ensure one-way traffic flow so that people can continue to be physically distanced. The lower path on First Avenue West behind the bandstand won't be used. We found that during the best of times, that was a traffic congestion area. So without that being used, we can keep that traffic just flowing. And we will be putting signage and arrows to remember to physically distance and which way to go. Sorry, it's a small map, but we are producing maps which will be on our website, social media, and shared throughout the world, that this is the way to go. Similarly, Harrison Park will have the same sort of mappage. The kiosk at Harrison Park. So the kiosk booth is a multi-purpose thing. Cars stop there and they may throw some change in the bucket. And those donations really add up and really help us continue to put on the lights. As well as it's an opportunity for those kiosk workers to introduce Owen sound, provide information of where the displays are, answer any questions, etc. It's a real positive thing. So we really, really like to have it. However, this year is unprecedented. Have we heard that word enough lately? So we've taken that down, that at this time, we're planning that it will only be Friday and Saturday nights. We're going to minimize exposure. We want to be able to do it in teams of bubbles, so family or whatever can go down and do it. Then they can provide the information and take voluntary donations if so. This plan is going to be reviewed up until the day we start, and it'll be reviewed every day as we go through. If cases in this area jump up, the kiosk will be shut down. Keep everybody safe. So for 2020, things be different. So there you'll see a revised due to COVID budget. Municipal support, 15. Sponsorships, we would be expecting 20, 25, 15. Donations instead of the 13, 14, 1,500. These are trying to be realistic numbers. Our expenses, we're not having any opening celebrations. We're not having festival in the park, so there's no cost there. Volunteer appreciation, we still want to have something. We still want to have something for a volunteer somehow. Advertising and marketing, we've dropped it down. We don't want it to diminish completely, but we're gonna use a little bit less, just a better focus. Payroll, we're not using a festival administrator. Our board of directors team is running with everything, since there's a lot less sort of on the fly. Our administration costs are almost that's the insurance, the websites, the office expenses, accounting fees, etc. That's a constant. And display build, we're heading down the curve of having to repair so many displays. We've done 80 something over the last couple of years, so we're starting to be able to starting down the curve. So that's what we're looking at for this year's budget. Going forward after that, the path ahead. I'm getting emails and information from a lot of festivals, and a lot of longstanding festivals are finding this. We're finding continued operation a challenge even before COVID hit. And now that COVID hit, it's made things very, very difficult. The world's changing. People's expectations are changing, so we have to evolve. The festival needs to ensure that it is sustainable. I think that's one of the most important sentences that I could say. The festival needs to ensure that it is sustainable. To draw more people, to keep the festival lively and exciting, we need to have new and innovative displays. We need to continue to maximize efficiency working with our city resources. This year has been tremendous. I can't say enough about the city staff that are working to get these displays out. They're ahead of schedule and challenging me, so that's good. And the last line I put in there is stay in our lane. Sometimes we try to be too much. We try to do too much for everybody. We're trying to have this kind of event. We want to grow this. We want to do this. There comes a time, and this COVID has helped us realize that if we stay in our lane, focus on doing the lights and doing that well, that it's our greatest roadmap to success. So the festival must be sustainable financially. We need to operate a model that we can support. We can't continue to always need to draw and draw and draw. We have to be a sustainable model to at some point that we are carrying the majority of this ourselves. Administratively, this is a very, very, very important one. The festival needs to tighten up. It needs to improve its governance, policies, and procedures, and reporting. We've never had a great set of guidelines. We will have a great set of guidelines. We will have a fixed process for every part of this in every way, so that it doesn't hinge on one person's remembering something, doesn't hinge on somebody doing this and then doing this. No, here is the binder. This is the way we operate. Volunteer base. We need to continue to grow our volunteer base through partnerships and willingness to reach out in every way to everybody. And as part of that, we need to have a succession plan, because things change, people change. Sometimes, we don't want this. If we don't want this to die out, so let's have it. How can we continue to keep this going? So, put together a budget for 2021. This is what I think we believe the festival will be able to run and be sustainable. Municipal support. should be less than the other sections. We should be able to create our own sponsorships and donations and fundraising programs to get the majority of the funds that we need to run. Our expenditures, they need to be reasonable, accurate. We will most likely, okay, so $10,000 for opening, volunteer appreciation, advertising and marketing, $4,500. Payroll expense, $9,000. That can get us an employee for the duration of the festival, a few weeks before, a few weeks after. Administration and display builds needs to be a number that takes into account we need some new displays, but we need to keep our displays working. So this is almost 1 year of a trial to see that this is the path. This, of course, assumes that we go back to some sort of a level of normalcy in 2021, but who knows? Who knows what's around the corner? So. So that's a brief rundown. Our lights this year are starting on Saturday, November 21st, and are running until Sunday, January 3rd. If anybody has any questions, comments, would like to help out, please feel free to contact us at info@fonl.ca and www.fonl.ca. And lastly, I need to say some thank yous. Thank you to this council for your continued support. It means a lot to the group to be part of this. Staff, the staff is interested in making this festival successful. Director Coulter and your staff, Adam Parsons, Larry Gill, Mike and Stewart, the guys actually hammering these things in. It's tremendous, tremendous help. Our community sponsors are a range of people that are doing this in memoriam. They're doing it as a family. They're doing it as a small business. They're doing it as a larger business. This community supports this festival. And it's quite breathtaking to be part of something that matters to the community so much. I'll never take it for granted. And speaking of our community, thank you. Thank you for coming out and being a part of it and smiling when you see it, because we feel it. So thank you very much.
Great. Thank you, Jamie. So lights are kicking on November 21st, just like they would any other year.
That's right.
And it's going to be one way, pretty well following the streets. So north on First Avenue West, south on First Avenue East. Marion, you had your hand up, I think. Go ahead.
I do. Thank you so much for this update, and also for all the work that you do with the festival and bring all those people to the city. I know so many people look forward to the lights being on, and this year especially, I think it's going to be a welcome treat. I did have a question on sponsorship.
Yes.
The previous council to this one did have a display built.
Yes.
And purchase it, and it gets put out, but we've never sponsored it ongoing. Is it usual that people just come forward if they've purchased a display, or how does it work?
With that display, due to the value of it, that it sort of had a few years built into it of sponsorship. It's an excellent and costly display. Normally, if you have a display built and it is approved, becomes part of the festival. After a few years, you would start to pay a sponsorship level.
So can you give me an estimate of what that particular display, if people don't know, it's the one of
Sure.
the two elves tossing
Yeah.
gifts into a gift bag.
Yeah.
It's a fairly big display. How much would something like that cost for sponsorship?
That one I would put in the $500 to $1,000 range.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Councillor Tamming, go ahead.
Jamie, I don't think we've ever met. I just want to thank you for the magic you create for the kids. You know where my office is, and when I work late at night, sometime I just walk around and I just listen to the kids, and it's a thing of beauty. I just want to commend your group as well. As I read the budget numbers that you presented, you're actually okay with a bit of a decrease, a substantial decrease from the city. And that's an unusual thing in my experience, my limited experience on council. And to get this community going with sponsorships and so forth is obviously a preferred route. And you've sort of inspired me, and I think I'll email you tomorrow. So I hope the sponsors are listening, and I hope they step up and help create the magic. So thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Councillor Thomas.
Thanks, Your Worship. Through you, I just want to thank Jamie for coming. It's always nice when a group or organization that the city has a stake in comes to let us know exactly what they're up to. We always wonder, that's for sure, as councillors. In terms of Councillor Kepke's question, before you leave, could you get her address so you know where to send that invoice when the sponsorship fee becomes important?
It's already been sent.
The only thing I noted as well, when you presented your budget figures, you told us that at the end of 2019, you had a surplus of,
Yes.
I think it was around $16,000. And I
Yep.
noticed that in the following budget, you didn't carry that forward anywhere in the budget information.
No,
And I
you're
just
right. So we
felt that was an oversight because you don't want
Yep.
stuff like that to get lost in the shuffle.
No. No, I didn't put the reserve lines in there. You're right.
Okay, thanks.
Go ahead, Carol.
Through your worship, further to Councillor Tamming's comments, I think the magic is also for the adults. So I just wanted to mention that. I also want to express a thank you. We often talk about random acts of kindness, and what you and your group are doing is an act of kindness to our community, and it will be especially felt this year. So thank you to all.
I don't think I could finish off by saying more than what everyone else has said. Obviously, this is a big hit for Owen Sound event each year that attracts a lot of people, and we hope you're very successful again this year like you've been other years. And it is going to be really important for people during this COVID, for mental health, etc. Get out of the house, go out for a walk, and this is a great way to do it. So we hope there'll be even more people attending them and seeing them this year. So
Me too.
thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you. Thank you. Good night, everyone.
And thanks to all your volunteers that helped you. So just before I go to number 10 question period here, I failed to note when we started the meeting that Deputy Mayor O'Leary is off tonight feeling ill and didn't want to come in. So that's why his chair is empty. Do we have any questions? We have none. At number 11, we have no correspondence items presented for consideration. At number 12A, we have a report from our city manager, Mr. Simmons, with regard to actions and decisions implemented on COVID-19. Go ahead.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, thank you. And thank you to council for giving us the opportunity to report on our actions through the month of September and October. I'd like to focus on the first two parts of the report, and it's really staff focused internally. One is, and building off of the Festival of Northern Lights and what you just mentioned, is with COVID and its lengthening on and on and on, we're finding, and municipalities that we talk to are finding that mental health is becoming a bigger and bigger issue for their staff and for their employees. Now that the seasons are changing, we're shorter days, less sunlight, we feel it's going to compound even more. With that, the senior leadership team will be meeting over the next few weeks and discussing how we might be able to implement some engagement with staff and understand how we might be able to improve mental health and keep that at the forefront of our conversation with the staff here at the city. In addition, in talking with our municipal neighbors, not only here in Grey and Bruce County, but around the province, we're finding that the Ministry of Labor and others are looking for more active opportunities in the screening process. So we're looking at those opportunities here also. We'll be looking at implementing a new screening process. To date, staff have done a very good job. Paper forms, everybody comes in, they screen themselves, they respond to a questionnaire. But again, we're looking for a more active process, not only for people in City Hall and in facilities, but in the field themselves. And that will correspond with what other municipalities around the province are doing. The third item in the report speaks to winter control. So winter control and COVID also pose a number of issues. If a member of our winter control team or various members were to come down with COVID, it could put a real dent in the operation, especially through storms, et cetera. The Director of Public Works has spoken with his team. They're well aware of all the protocols in place, from everything from sanitizing to physical distancing, et cetera. We've also had conversations with the Grey County CAOs and trying to look at implementing a memorandum of understanding. So if one of our counties might experience a COVID outbreak, then the other members of the Public Works and the winter maintenance teams could step in and help out. And I think that's just a great neighborly thing and really appreciated by all. Transit, we continue on with transit, 10 riders at any given time on our buses. And riders, I will stress, are required to wear masks. It was brought to our attention that our signage should be updated to include mask wearing. Our Director of Public Works is working with that team, and that signage will be updated to make sure it's really evident to all riders to please wear a mask while they're on the bus. Events. So this is great news from the events team and building off of the Festival of Northern Lights. Planning for Owen Sound Celebrates is well underway. This past July, the Community Waterfront Heritage Center featured an exhibit called Celebrating a Century, honoring Owen Sound's 100th anniversary of incorporation back in 1920. The exhibit featured 8 panels that were scanned with a smartphone, which would open up 8 different movies. Each video detailed a very important part of Owen Sound's history. So in partnership with the Festival of Northern Lights this year, these panels will be enlarged and placed along First Avenue East and First Avenue West with the festival's light displays. This will give people an opportunity to go on a self-guided historical walking tour while enjoying the festival lights and also maintaining physical distancing. In addition to that, the festival route, the city's partnering with Rogers TV, who has been a very great partner with us, airing tonight's council session also, and airing a special celebrating the 100 years of incorporation. And this is all going to be capped off with a fireworks display from Victoria Park. The fireworks, again, will be lit off at Victoria Park, which is a high point in the city, as most people know. Staff will create a list of possible viewing locations to discourage overgathering in certain areas. We're going to cut down on in-person gathering, but the fireworks should be noticeable from all points within the city, and we're really looking forward to that. We're working on, and there's a report coming after this one, speaking to the Santa Claus parade, and I will leave information about that to that report at that time. From a facility operations, parks, and open space perspective, we had a strong season at the campground, a lot of people getting out. At the Julie MacArthur Regional Recreation Center, the Family Y is open, the ice pads are open, and Sisters Cafe is now open. The users have been doing really well about following protocols. They're wearing masks. They're watching those coming in and out from ice and training and hockey practice. And I'd like to commend those organizers for really paying attention and taking this very seriously. The Bayshore Field Hospital, we've been meeting with Grey Bruce Health Unit and the hospital. The field hospital is still set up in the Bayshore. It's going to continue to be set up until further notice. We have another meeting set up the first week of December with the health unit and the hospital to discuss further. The OHL has recently met and announced a February potential announcement that a February start to their upcoming season. Training camps are expected to open late January. So we need about 2 weeks to really turn that center around. I think everybody is looking forward to the potential of the attack coming back and playing in the OHL season getting underway. But again, our first principle, first and foremost, is safety of our residents and citizens here. And I think Grey Bruce Health Services and the hospital are both keenly aware of the needs of when that field hospital should come down, and we'll lay those plans out as we get closer to that date. As we're also aware, the province stepped in, and our first round of COVID funding in the Safe Restart was $622,000. We have applied for a phase 2 Safe Restart phased in funding of $220,000, and we hope to hear back from the province on that also in the near term. So without any other comments on the report is for information, and we'll take questions.
Good. Thank you. Questions? Seeing none, does someone want to move receipt, approval of the recommendation? Go ahead.
I'll move approval of the recommendation.
Okay. Still no questions, comments? Call the question. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. 12B, I think we're back to you, Tim, with regard to enhanced neighborhood safety update.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, thank you again for the opportunity to bring this report forward. This deals with a more serious matter in the city. It's a hot spot that that council declared as a hot spot. The recommendations in this report are seeking that we have this location identified, continue on as a hotspot status. We request that the operations committee review the placement of crossing guards near the hotspot. We are also recommending that and requesting that the city's bylaw enforcement staff implement an evening shift to monitor the hotspot until the subject area is repealed by council resolution. And we are requesting that staff include a hotspot operating expense in the 2021 budget. Throughout the past 6 weeks in this pilot initiative, staff have worked closely with Owen Sound Police Services. There's been a definite decrease in calls for service at the address over this time frame. Some individuals are no longer frequenting the address as a result of enforcement, and that's what we believe helped the situation immensely thus far. Our Owen Sound bylaw enforcement team has been there from 11 p.m. to 6 p.m. daily. Bylaw was required, or did require, to call Owen Sound Police Services on 4 separate occasions. However, during the 6 weeks, no bylaw infractions were issued during the overnight hours. As a 6-week pilot initiative has been trending toward a more positive outcome for the neighborhood, it's become evident that we feel as though the time frame isn't quite sufficient to formally end the additional enforcement activities. Therefore, staff recommend extending the activity in this area for another 6 weeks, and we would bring a report back in December outlining what has happened over the next 6 weeks if council agrees to continue with this pilot initiatives. One item that we specifically call out in the report that we didn't originally consider was with regard to the start of the school year and children walking to and from school through this geographic area and this neighborhood. We did place a crossing guard temporarily in the area. We can quantify that more than 30 children are using the route each morning and afternoon. We believe with this information, it should warrant a further review by the operations committee to recommend if a permanent crosswalk guard in this location is justified. So we'd ask that that item be referred to the operations committee, that they could study it. That is part of what operations committee looks at, and thus the referral to that group. We've had also a follow-up meeting with the social service not-for-profit agencies during this 6-week pilot program to continue the conversation regarding hotspots and better understand what future initiatives and potential opportunities to better mitigate these situations might be. Although not a solution in hand, the information from this meeting will be used to inform future committee and task force work. And we also anticipate that future meetings will be scheduled with these agencies to continue that dialogue. The financial implications from the pilot project are approximately $12,500. We anticipate an additional $2,000 to $3,000 to accommodate the extension of another 6 weeks. And staff are recommending that $10,000 be added to the operating expenses for the 2020 budget deliberations. With that, it's the end of the report, and we'll open for questions.
Great, thank you. Councillor Tamming.
Through your worship, I want to thank the city manager for taking this seriously, and council generally, and staff and the police and so forth. I did have an exchange by email with one of the neighbors, and I said I won't mention who it is, but I did say I understand things are getting a bit better, And she quite properly said, only when I can walk down the street and not feel threatened, only then can I say things have been improved. And I know, City Manager, you'd agree with those sentiments. These are nasty disputes, nasty situations. If you ask any lawyer some of their toughest files over the years, it does involve neighborhood issues. And I just want to say to this particular person, again, I won't name her, but you are being heard. This city council is taking you seriously, and every step's being taken to be as vigilant as we can. So I just wanted to put that on the record.
Somebody will have to move this, but Councillor Thomas, you had your hand up.
And I had my hand up to move the recommendations, Your Worship, and to also offer my thanks to the city manager, bylaw enforcement staff, and the police for all of their efforts on behalf of this neighborhood.
Councillor Merton.
Through your worship, thank you to everyone. Certainly the approach is much more comprehensive, and I'm quite pleased to see the interchange with the social services and also the actions that are taken. Question that I have is around the evaluation component, because it will be important to measure not just this hotspot, but should any others happen in the future. Can you speak a little bit more about how you actually will use measurement tools to evaluate the effectiveness of this?
Through you, Mayor, to Councillor Merton. Excellent question. And evaluation is always sort of our first question we ask ourselves too. How can we really put success or non-success onto something? How do we measure something? And with this particular situation, there are so many different parts to it that range from addiction issues to housing to a whole host of, thus the meeting with the social service agencies. I'm not certain that anybody has a definitive, like, here's the quantifiable measure or items that we can put a number to, except working with Owen Sound Police Services, the number of calls that come in, the number of complaints that are either raised or not raised. In this particular situation, the one item we could quantify was the number of children walking through that neighborhood, so we grabbed that right away. And I think that will prove effective in the Operations Committee's discussions. And as Councillor Tamming just said, when people can feel safe, again, walking through the neighborhood is really the ultimate indicator of success. But we'll be working with Owen Sound Police Services over the next 6 weeks also to identify potential measures that we could come back in that follow-up report with, but we don't have one specified today.
Okay. Any other questions? Oh, sorry, Councillor Gregg, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Body. I get increasingly nervous about leaning back to the taxpayer for more expenditures to be able to police this issue in our city. This is asking and potentially looking ahead to assuming a higher cost on all the general taxpayers. There has been some provinces in the country who empowered municipalities to take steps that Ontario does not have at this time. And there's been some requests from municipalities back to the province to be able to have greater tools. Are you able to speak to some initiatives that other provinces have empowered municipalities to be able to respond quite specifically to scenarios like this that we don't have now?
Through the mayor to Councillor Gregg, I think what you're speaking about and what we'd mentioned prior were a number of provinces have put into effect a Safer Communities and Neighborhood Act within their province, and also known as SCAN laws, SCAN. And SCAN laws were first implemented in Manitoba back in 2002, so 18 years ago. They've since been adopted in Saskatchewan, Yukon, Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, Alberta, and also more recently in British Columbia. And what these laws do, or what this act does, it does allow for a SCAN unit at a municipal level, usually managed by the Police Services Board of the area, to investigate the complaints. And if there are reasonable grounds, they can issue warnings, pursue the residents' landlords, and eventually ask a court to issue a community safety order. to board the property up and essentially gate it off for 3 months. And they use the 90 days or 3 months again from the information that we've researched. It allows all action to stop there, and it really sort of puts just a dead end to it. So if it is, drugs or whatever else the case might be, it just brings it to a complete standstill for 90 days. The province of Ontario did look at a Safer Communities and Neighborhood Act. I think most recently back in 2010, I don't believe it received royal assent, and it sort of stalled out, but that would be something that I know the City of Toronto and others are still looking at bringing forward again, opportunities for the municipality to step in with more authority to manage these unique areas that are different for every municipality, like what might be happening here. It could be similar in nature to something in the City of London, but it's just not the same. We're different sizes, different populations, different needs.
Thank you to the city manager for that response. I might have a follow-up motion then after we vote on the one on the floor.
Okay, thank you. So if there's no further questions at this moment, I'll call the question. All in favor? That's carried. I'll go back to Councillor Gregg.
I'd like to ask council if they would support a report coming back from the city manager to speak further to what the community safe, the acronym was. Okay. If we could have a report come back to council, perhaps then we can take some action on and present a letter and forward it to the province to advocate for similar legislation that other provinces have.
Do you need a report from that, Councillor Gregg, or is that something you want to work on and just come back next council prepared to?
It would be, well, I'm not the expert, the city manager is the expert, so it would be requesting a report to come back from staff for further information, I think, for council. Go ahead.
Through the mayor, staff can work on an item to bring back to a future council meeting with more research around the Safer Communities and Neighborhood Act. And potentially within that, there could be a recommendation then to advance a letter to Queen's Park or to the federal government on this.
Ms. Bloomfield, it makes sense to do a motion then for a report back. Go ahead, Councillor Gregg.
So would you like me to expand on that motion then, or motion to have a report come back on the Safer Communities Act?
Is that enough? Okay, any questions?
And I guess second to that, right now, we're undertaking this larger, broader scale community improvement, community safety. It's been ongoing for several months, and I'm not sure if it's going to wrap up by the end of the year, but perhaps that report could just kind of touch upon some of that discussion that's already going on.
Ms. Coulter, is this time to give us a brief update? I know we're kind of catching you off guard, but on what's going on with the committee?
Certainly, Your Worship. The draft plan has been presented to the steering and advisory committees, and it will be before council for approval before the end of the year, which is what's required as per the legislation.
Will that report catch a corner of what Councillor Gregg's looking for or not?
No, it wouldn't, Your Worship.
Good.
Then I would just leave it to stand alone as a report to come back to council on the Safer Communities Act.
Councillor Thomas.
While I appreciate the intent, I understand where you're going with that. I'm really not sure that a report to council is going to have any effect at all, when perhaps what we should be doing is just directing the mayor to write a letter to our MPP suggesting that Ontario needs to get back on bringing one of these acts forward. I'm not sure that having staff time devoted to preparing a report for us when we can take no action is the best use of staff time. I think a letter to Bill Walker and maybe to the Premier and the Minister of the Solicitor General, is that, I can never remember all those names, but I think that might, from my perspective, that's probably a better way to go at this point. And, so I won't support the motion, but I do appreciate the intent.
Someone else over there I thought had their hand up. Councillor Hamley.
Just to the city manager, correct me if I'm wrong, if I remember those acts correctly, those are for specifically for remote communities, are they not?
No, in those, perhaps in some provinces, but for Alberta and others, it's like Edmonton and other cities are taking advantage of those. And really, they were a little bit of the driving force behind getting those Safe Communities Acts put into place.
Thank you.
Councillor Gregg?
If I could then, to speak to Councillor Thomas's comments, that's exactly what I was looking for. I just didn't know if council would feel armed with enough information to just vote on a letter to go forward tonight, but I would withdraw that motion as I presented it, and I would just make a motion that council forward a letter to the MPP, to the Premier, and to the Ministry of the Solicitor General, which I think includes the Attorney General, or just the proper language too, but asking for the province to look at the Safer Communities Act in other provinces and how we can be strengthened with its use.
That makes sense. Okay. Any other discussion? I will call the question. All in favor? And that is carried. So I think next, thanks Mr. Simmons for the report. We did pass it? Yes. 12C. Now we've got I think 7 or 8 reports. Mr. Kafalis.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you, Your Worship. As Council knows, the city has been successful in obtaining connecting link funding to resurface 16th Street East from 9th Avenue to 18th Avenue East. Unfortunately, the tender cost came in higher than the pre-construction estimates, which didn't allow for the completion of the project as originally intended. Due to the shortfall of available funds, the project was advised to go only as far as 16th Avenue East opposed to 18th Avenue East. As such, staff is preparing a connecting link funding application to seek funds to cover the remainder of the project in 2021. The submission requires council's approval through a motion. Staff is recommending that in consideration of staff report OP 20-043 respecting connecting link funding application or connecting link funding application intake 6 2021-2022 Highway 26 16th Street East 16th Avenue East to 18th Avenue East Rehabilitation Phase 2 City Council 1 receive the report. 2 approves the connecting link program intake 6 2021-2022 application for Highway 26 16th Street East in the amount of $500,000 excluding HST rebate to allow eligible project costs with MTO funding request of 90% of the eligible expenses or $450,000 excluding the HST rebate. And 3, if successful, council authorized the mayor, city clerk to execute documents necessary to enter into a funding agreement with the Minister of Transportation for Highway 26, 16th Street East, 16th Avenue East to 18th Avenue East Rehabilitation Phase 2.
Great, thank you. Councillor Hamley.
Sounds like a great project, and I'm happy to move the recommendation, Your Worship.
Good, thank you. Any questions? Councillor Thomas.
I guess I would just ask, we've had a lot of these projects coming through lately. It's great that there's money around because, my goodness, we have enough roads that need work that it's good. But I just wonder about associated items like landscaping and tree planting and how much of that is planned for as we move forward with these projects. In the early days, Owen Sound in the pictures didn't have a single tree down in the river valley at all. And now it is one of the most charming things about this city. And there are a lot of roads in the city that are being built and reconstructed. I'd really like to see some tree planting going on along with them to make it a little bit more attractive, specifically up on that 16th Street strip.
Mr. Kafalis?
Thank you, Your Worship. I think it all depends on the situation and where we identify trees will go. In this specific case, the landscaping will be minimal and probably include what was originally there. Again, some of these costs aren't eligible for connecting link funding. Like we're including a sidewalk that's not eligible under the cost, but we're including that to just create the connection between the existing to fill the gaps. So I think it depends on the project. And in this specific case, we didn't allow for any additional landscaping, knowing how fiscally the requirements of who would cover what costs. So eventually, in some cases, say we go down, I'm going way off base here, but say if we proceed down 2nd Avenue East, we would look at including enough beautification to enhance the area and make it attractive, similar to what you see in the downtown core between 10th and 8th Street. So, I mean, in the future, it doesn't preclude us from adding trees, and we can come back with a separate budget to do that.
Okay, thanks. I think it's important to fix the roads, but I think it's also important to consider the aesthetic look of the community as we move forward with doing some of these things. So thank you.
Councillor Kepke?
Thank you. Through you, Your Worship, to the director. This is the area that's currently being worked on. Is that correct?
This is yes, it's further east of what we're currently working on.
Okay, so nothing that's being done now will have to be redone to continue on with the next couple of blocks that need to be finished.
It'll be an extension of what we're doing right now. So there might be some grinding of the existing or the new asphalt that goes in there just to tie in the future asphalt, but it would be limited to replacing anything that we're currently doing now.
And when is this anticipated to take place? Or it depends on if you get the funding, is that correct?
Exactly. If we are successful in getting the funding, we have planned to do it next year in 2021.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, other questions? Seeing none, I will call the question. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you, Mr. Kafalis. Next one is parades. Is that yours?
It is. Thank you, Your Worship, and through Your Worship. Remembrance Day and Santa Claus Parade will be honored and celebrated respectfully in 2020. These two important social and cultural events will proceed with provincial COVID-19 restrictions in place to ensure the safety of the public, participants, and organizers. This year, the Royal Canadian Legion Branch 6 is planning a much smaller ceremony, which will not include a parade or singing or attendance from the general public. The ceremony will take place at Sanitation, with the religious ceremony being led by Reverend Sherman. Most wreaths will be laid prior to the ceremony, with a few remaining wreaths laid by the Legion executive. A bugler and piper will be present. Just to reiterate, the ceremony will be closed to the general public, and the road will be closed on 1st Avenue West from 8th Street to 9th Street between 7 a.m. and 1 p.m. Remembrance Day service will begin at 11 a.m. on November 11th. Arrangements have been made to bring the ceremonies to a viewing and listening audience. The following media outlets will be broadcasting the ceremonies. Roger TV, Channel 53, it'll be live on Rogers TV Grey County website. It'll be live on the City of Owen Sound's official Facebook page, and will be broadcast on the radio and online through 560 CFOS. Again, it'll be on Roger TV, Channel 53 live on Rogers TV Grey County website, live on the City of Owen Sound's official Facebook page, and broadcast on on the radio and online through 560 CFOS. This year marks the 75th Kiwanis Club of Owen Sound Santa Claus Parade. To commemorate this significant event, the Kiwanis Club is planning a static Santa Claus parade in the parking lot of the Bayshore Community Center. The event will be held on November 21st from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. It will be the first time that such an event is held at night. The event won't be open to the pedestrian traffic. Residents will be expected to drive by, display, and wave to Santa. For those who don't have access to a vehicle, arrangements have been made to pick up residents at the transit terminal on a city bus, which will then take them by display, then return it to the terminal. The bus will be limited to a maximum of 10 riders per trip.
Great, thank you. Councillor Dodd.
Thank you, Worship. Great report. Just to highlighting those are two very important events that are happening in our area over the next month or so. Also, I'll throw my Kiwanis plug in here as well. Get ready, because the Christmas tree sales are going to start happening. So if you've got a great lower back, There's about 1,400 trees that need to be unloaded. Masks will be provided. Anyways, I will move approval of the motion, and yeah, no, that's really great events coming up.
Great, thank you. Any questions? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you, Dennis. I think the next one is the sanitation pump station. Is that yours or Pam's? Just kidding. Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through Your Worship. The city currently operates two very old sanitary lift stations along East Bay Shore Road. One is the Goodyear Sanitary Pump Station, and the other is the East Bay Shore Road Sewage Pump Station. Both of these lift stations have reached the end of their useful life. Instead of replacing two pumping stations, the plan is to combine the two into one. This will not only reduce the overall capital cost, it will also reduce the annual O&M cost. The project is the first phase of a two-phase project involving the road reconstruction of East Bay Shore Road, or Great Road 15. The city has received 3 bids on the tender, 2 of which were within the approved construction budget for the project. Staff is recommending that in consideration of staff report CR 20-074 respecting RFT 20-052 East Bay Shore Road, Gray Route 15 sanitary pumping station construction and road reconstruction phase 1, City Council 1 award the above noted project to Stone Town Construction Limited, the lowest compliant bid, received at $1,348,307.67, including contingency and excluding HST, and 2, direct staff to bring forward a bylaw to authorize the mayor and city clerk to execute the agreement.
Great, thank you. Councillor Gregg.
Thank you, Mayor Body. If memory serves me correct, I think we've been 4, maybe 5 years getting to this point here tonight on these pumping stations. It's quite overdue. So this is a positive, an extremely positive step. And seeing the budget numbers and the tender numbers that came in, it's a pleasure to move this forward. So I move the recommendation.
Thank you. Any questions? Seeing none, I'll call. Oh, you do have a question there, or were you a step ahead? Sorry, Councillor Hamlin.
Do we know the breakdown of how much goes to the capital expense and how much goes to the water and wastewater? It's all wastewater. Okay, thank you.
Good. Okay. So I'll call the question. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Next.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through Your Worship. Part of operating a transit system is maintaining the bus stops, especially during the winter, when we must maintain the stops in compliance with the Accessibility for Ontarians with Disabilities Act. The transit system has 146 bus stops, 48 of which are equipped with bus shelters. The city advertised a request for proposals to provide the maintenance service for the bus stops. 3 proposals were received and evaluated based on background, qualifications, and resources, snow removal management, cleaning and general maintenance, and value added plus price. The highest scoring proposal was the one that was submitted by Edgewood Group Incorporation. As such, staff is recommending that in consideration of staff report CR 20-073 respecting award of RFP 20-047 bus stop and shelter maintenance, City Council award the above noted request for proposal Edgewood Group Incorporation, the highest scoring proposal received at $160,883.20, not including HST, for a 2-year term, and to direct the manager of purchase and risk and asset management to issue a purchase order to confirm the award.
Thank you. Councillor Merton.
Through your worship, I have some questions, but so may I ask them now, or you want a motion first? I'm happy to make the motion and ask a question.
Sorry, I've got my button off. You have moved it, and so you've got questions. Go ahead.
Help me understand. I do know from time to time that the city does employ seasonal workers. I'm wondering what the difference is and what makes a decision around a contracted service and hiring seasonal workers that are short-term employees. I need to understand how that decision gets made.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through Your Worship. In a case like this, we look at many things, including hires of seasonal staff that have to be dedicated to doing these bus stops. It's not as simple as saying we can use the existing staff that we hire as seasonals, because during a snow event, they will be required to either be cleaning sidewalks, shoveling, that sort of thing. But at the same time, we have to get these bus stops clear, especially first thing in the morning, when we have to make sure our residents have access to them. Again, then it would be also dedicating specific equipment towards this specific task. Again, we couldn't just say we're going to take off our snow plows our sidewalk plows that are dedicated to sidewalks and then put them on the bus stop. So the work has to take place simultaneously. And again, a business case is developed as which way is cheaper to do. And in this case, it is cheaper, relatively cheaper for a contractor to do. And again, in the summertime, we have to make sure we do provide regular maintenance in terms of cleaning the bus stops, specifically the bus shelters. So when we take that all into account, we do a business case to determine if it's better to do it in-house or to actually hire a contractor to do it. In this case, we found that it's cheaper or more cost-effective to hire a contractor to do it.
Thank you. One more follow-up.
Go ahead.
So this happens every year, snow clearing for the bus. So this issue item would come back every 2 years then. It's a 2-year contract for our council to look at. Thank you.
That is correct. Thank you. Through Your Worship.
Okay. Any other questions? Councillor Merton has moved this. I will call the question. All in favor? That is carried. Then next on the list is paving of 8th Street between 9th Avenue and 10th Avenue. Just checking. Thanks for those reports, Dennis. Richard, you got, I think next on here I've got a verbal report that would have been given by Deputy Mayor O'Leary with regard to Graber's Board of Health. I'm not sure if you've got notes.
Yeah, thanks, Your Worship. I'll be pinch hitting tonight on the Board of Health report. Just a couple of highlights. Out of 178 cases to date in Grey and Bruce counties, it really caught my eye that there are six active cases presently, but 0 are hospitalized. There have been 0 deaths. There have been 0 facilities in outbreak, 0 schools in outbreak, and 0 daycares in outbreak. So things still continue to look pretty good here in terms of the numbers. You'll have heard of the cluster in the town of South Bruce Peninsula. There are 10 cases so far. Most of them have recovered already. However, the health unit is now following over 140 close contacts related to that cluster. So that's how easily it happens. In terms of other information, the only other point I want to make is that in our health unit, contact tracing exceeds provincial targets with 100% of all cases contacted within 24 hours. So our health unit is doing a heck of a good job making sure we all stay safe. Thank you.
I'll get you to move receipt of that verbal report, and then we can vote on it. Thanks.
I'll move receipt of that verbal report.
And I think Councillor Gregg's going to stiff you with a question.
No, actually, I'm not going to stick to Councillor Thomas, who's pinch hit very well. But I would ask the mayor maybe just to expand on, recently it was discussed and advanced the county master cycling plan. And I know you're on the bike quite regularly and know probably the intentions very well. It's a strong intention in terms of attacking climate change and environmental impact. But was there some suggestion that that plan would be coming to the local municipalities as well, or are you able just to expand on that a little bit? I thought it was very positive.
Thanks, Councillor Gregg. I'm glad you didn't stiff Councillor Thomas. I didn't see this one coming. My recollection from the meeting is that there was a request that it be circulated to lower tiers to have a look at. It was something that was developed with a provincial organization, and around Grey County, it's especially over towards Blue Mountains and Grey Highlands that you get a lot of bicyclers, more so than perhaps this side of the county where it's a little more flat. But the idea is to be able to have connecting routes, et cetera, and a whole plan of cycling routes and be able to attract more people to the area, have better facilities for sure. But the idea is that it will come to the lower tiers for our review and a report at some point. Thanks. Did I call the question on the motion? No, okay, so I will now. So this is to receive the verbal report from Councillor Thomas on behalf of Deputy Mayor O'Leary. All in favor? That's carried. Thanks. So we're down to the consent agenda. Ms. Bloomfield.
Thank you. Through your worship, on the consent agenda this evening is minutes for receipt from the DIA Board, Owen Sound Housing Company, Owen Sound Municipal Non-Profit Housing Corporation, and the Police Board. There's a flag flying request with business license. There's a flag flying request and business licenses have been issued to the Rocking Horse, which has relocated to 856 2nd Ave East, Rainville Audio at 830 3rd Ave East, and Owen Sound Hot Yoga at 908 2nd Ave East. Lastly, there is the information package. A full listing is available at 13J.
Great. Thank you. Councillor Thomas, go ahead.
Moved by myself that City Council receives items 13A to 13J on the consent agenda dated November 2nd, 2020.
Great. All in favor? That's carried. Then I'll go back to DIA report. Councillor Kepke, there's a couple there. Anything you want to advise us of?
Thank you. I'll just give a brief summary of the meeting. Grey Bruce Health Unit made a presentation on Sharps disposal kiosks, a harm reduction strategy, and it's being recommended that Sharps disposal kiosks be installed in appropriate locations in the downtown area. Members approved the cancellation of the hottest street sale and retention of the Ramped to undertake a fall marketing campaign. You may question finally canceling the hottest street sale now, but everyone thought things might improve enough that it could take place, and this is just catching up with those decisions. Portion of funding from the County of Grey under the Community Improvement Program allocated to the city is being requested to be used towards downtown beautification and promotion. And this would be expanding some of the areas where the flowers are being put. The board discussed the development of a social media calendar. And then a special DIA meeting took place on September 22nd, where the board received a presentation and staff report regarding marketing, branding, and action plan update. It's being recommended that the identity of downtown be known as the River District, with marketing plans and rebranding taking place based on this focus, with creation of a sense of place and pride and a definition of what the region looks like.
Great, thank you. Any questions for Councillor Kepke? Go ahead, Councillor Gregg.
Thanks, everybody. My question is, it didn't elaborate further on the community improvement plan program, the funding that we're getting right now, which is $20,000 from the county. Is that $5,000 new money, or what's that $5,000 currently being expended on, in which case we're looking to shift those monies to the beautification program?
I will ask the Director of Community Services if she can assist in answering this. I believe it was a 5,000 of that 20 that was being asked for. I'm not sure. I wasn't at that meeting, but from my understanding.
In reading the motion, Your Worship, it looks like it was requesting that there's $20,000 each year that comes from the County of Grey for the Community Improvement Plan. And it's looking that 5,000 of that be dedicated to assist in downtown beautification through that CIP. The CIP, you'll get a report next meeting with the different programs. One of them is a landscaping program, so perhaps it would be that. But I don't know if the Director of Corporate Services wants to add a comment on the $20,000 of funding from the county in terms of the CIP.
Sorry, this is for the 2020 fiscal year? That has not yet been formulated where it will be allocated in the budget, and we'll be looking at that when we bring forward the operating budget in December.
So perhaps, Your Worship, the motion is premature and it should just be deferred or referred to budget.
Okay, so do you want DIA to make that correction next meeting?
Have to.
Okay, so we'll need to bring that forward to the DIA meeting. Then,
Just receiving the minutes, so it wouldn't be something that we could turn over here.
That's the response I was wondering about. It was just unclear to me. Are we shifting money here and it didn't expand upon where we're taking monies from? Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Tamming. You've got your hand up. Go ahead.
I just want to give a bit of a megaphone to Mr. Dan Sprague, who spoke at the September 9 DIA meeting. I would ask Ms. Kapke about it, but I think Councillor O'Leary was there instead of her. He is legitimately upset about a massive wall that has paint peeling from it above the former Mike's books. This might seem like a small item, but when I read it earlier this afternoon, I thought, you know, it's little things like this that erode a downtown over time. It's not fair to the people who put the money into their facades. It's not fair to the tourists and visitors who come downtown that's one of the first things they see at a high-profile intersection. And so I just want to give a megaphone to those concerns and just to advise Mr. Sprague and others that I personally would like to speak to the city manager and Ms. Coulter over the next few months about having a more proactive approach, identifying, without complaints, identifying problem properties and doing something about them in a more systemic way. Something is broken with our enforcement, and for us to have to stare at that for the better part of a year or more is simply not right. So I just wanted to give that megaphone to Mr. Sprague.
I can maybe add some information to that in that I've talked to the building owner about this specifically, and there's construction going on next door that is affecting his building as well, and there's an intention there to do everything at the appropriate time. Councillor Merton, nonprofit housing, anything to report?
Through your worship, the minutes are presented for receipt. I have nothing additional to share.
All right, thank you. Anyone want to ask her any questions? No. Councillor Gregg, you don't want to? No. Good. Thank you. The last is the Owen Sound Police Services Board, Councillor Kapke. Thanks.
thank you, Your Worship. Just a summary of the June 24 meeting of Police Services. Owen Sound Police Services has entered into a partnership with Victim Services Bruce Gray Perth to bring Project Lifesaver to the city of Owen Sound. This is a subscription-based service managed by Victim Services, and it allows families or caregivers of persons at risk of wandering to acquire radio frequency transmitting bracelets, which can be detected by Owen Sound Police within a 2-kilometer radius to track and locate the missing person. I would encourage members of council to review the 2020 operational plan for Owen Sound Police Service, which contains 7 pillars: mental health, addiction, traffic, communication, sustainability, community policing, and member wellness. Statistics Canada results on calls for service have been released, indicating Owen Sound has a significantly higher number of violations per capita than any other comparators shown. This is not the best place to be a leader. This indicates there is a higher workload placed on local authorities and that the crime rate is currently not going down. Compounding the fact of already being busy is the fact that each charge is taking significantly longer to process, which is a direct result in additional time and effort required by the ministry in order to process a charge. It was noted that as crime continues to grow and mental health and addiction cases continue to rise, the city will need to focus on additional resources in order to provide adequate and effective policing for its citizens. Financial reports indicate the budget consists of 90.6% going to salaries and benefits, 7.3% to purchases, and 2.1% is dedicated toward capital projects. That's it.
Great, thank you. Any questions for Councillor Kepke? Seeing none. So we're down to number 14 in the agenda, and the first one is the minutes from the Accessibility Advisory Committee. Councillor Hamlin.
Thank you, Your Worship. It was a very quick meeting on October 26th. We approved accessibility features of Block 3 of the East Court Residences subdivision at 1458 14th Street East, and for a two-stage 96-unit residential development at 2261 9th Avenue East. And I will move those minutes.
Great, thank you. Any questions? Seeing none, call the question. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Next are minutes of community services from October 21st. Councillor Kepke.
Thank you, Worship. I guess I forgot to turn my mic off before. Summary of the October 21 minutes of community services. Committee received a staff report regarding the public engagement process and next steps for the historical courthouse and jail, and that, I believe, is proceeding quite well. The 2020 Summer Recreation Program wrap-up was presented along with the fall-winter programming. It's been being recommended that the city offer soccer camp, hockey skills, and power skating camps for 2021. Also being recommended is the cancellation of skating programs, closure of the track at the Bayshore until January 21, and this being revisited after consultation with the health unit. Given the reduction in events for City in 2021, focus will be on the Tom Thompson Art Gallery calendar as opposed to the previously produced City Events calendar. Some good discussion took place regarding ideas for things to do to help during these difficult times where individuals are unable to conduct their normal physical and social activities. On a positive note, committee are recommending that an application to the Cultural Canada Spaces Fund take place for funding to be used towards various upgrades, items, and projects required at Kelso Beach Park. And with this summary, Your Worship, I'd like to move that the approval of these minutes.
Great, thank you. Again, Councillor Thomas does have a question. Go ahead.
Yes, I'd like to ask for a friendly amendment, Your Worship, to have item B1 pulled from the report so that we can look at it separately. I've given this a lot of consideration. At the meeting, I had concerns. That's the Bayshore walking track specifically. The city manager's report tonight underlined my thinking in a great way because mental health really is a concern this year for a lot of people. And as I'm sure Councillor Gregg will tell you, physical activity is key in promoting mental health. And I would really like staff to come back with the report on how we can get that track open through the winter for people to use it.
So you're asking for one part to be pulled out? Go ahead.
It's item 6B1, number 4 in the recommendation. That be dealt with separately.
You're moving the report and that be dealt with separately?
Yes.
So with regard to the rest of the report, any discussion, any questions? Councillor Gregg.
Thanks, Mayor. My question is, and I might have scrolled further back just in that last comment, but item D spoke about a community cultural spaces grant program. And I recall about a year and a half, maybe 2 years ago, I don't think we were successful in a grant application to perform a lot of capital work at the Tom Thompson Art Gallery. But when I saw this grant stream, I just wondered, and I respect the comments of the staff and the individuals who brought that idea of the grant program forward at the park. But if we applied for a similar grant a couple years ago for the Tom, why we just have a specific one coming forward here and that one has fallen by the wayside?
Maybe the director can help with that.
Go ahead, Ms. Coulter.
Through you, Your Worship, I'm not certain. I don't think it was a Canada Cultural Spaces Fund that the Tom applied for. I thought it was an infrastructure grant. So I do think this is different. This one was brought forward to our attention by the Summerfolk executive. We'd met with them and they had urged that the city apply. It was certainly timely with the erosion impact at Kelso that we would apply for the work and the pending work in terms of the electrical at the park. I think the city manager just...
Through you, Mayor, to Councillor Gray, too. I'd also note, too, that the one item that staff really takes a look at with grant applications is the opportunity to fund whatever the requirement is of the municipality, whether it's 50-cent dollars, 20-cent dollars, whatever it might be. So in this particular situation with Kelso, we looked at the 5-year capital plan for Kelso and what was going to be coming up in those capital plans. So the grant request is tied to that to make sure that we weren't just coming to council with sort of that pie in the sky ask of, hey, there's a grant available, let's go get it. We wanted to make sure that we could fund our side of whatever that grant request might be also. So it's not just, I think your question dealt with why just that one item also, and that's why the capital funding was there.
Okay. Other questions? Okay, so I'm calling the question on the motion, which was to approve the minutes saved and accept that one part. So all in favor? That is carried. Now, if we can go back to the discussion of that one section. Go ahead.
I'd just like to make a motion, Your Worship, to have staff bring back a report on ways in which we may actually be able to open that walking track. I understand there might be expenses involved. I did read the report. I know that there are issues there, but I really like to see something just a little more in depth on how we could achieve getting that track open for people. Because if we come to January and the determination is that medical facility is staying there until next May, again, we've got a building here which is clearly closed to the public, but it could be open in some areas, and the walking track is a perfect example of that.
Mr. Simmons?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Thomas. I think if the notion is to bring back a report, to also staff would like to suggest some alternative opportunities also, if the track can't be opened, of other locations that might be appropriate for walking.
That sounds great to me.
Councillor Merton?
Through your worship, as part of that staff report, would there be a consultation with the seniors groups to find out, we don't want to, in other words, to say what would meet your needs, what are you looking at, what compromise might be possible as part of the whole process?
Through your worship, I have personally already spoken with a couple of the seniors, certainly not everyone, and not everyone who walks is also a senior, but certainly we could talk to those groups when we're developing options to bring back to you.
Councillor Gregg?
Thanks, everybody. Just for clarity purposes, the original motion in the minutes had 4 items to it, and Councillor Thomas is speaking to number 4. Are we dealing with 1, 2, 3 yet before? Oh, we've already saved and accepted number 4. Okay, thanks.
Okay, I'll call the question if there's no hands going up. All in favor? That is carried. Last, I believe we have Operations Committee. Councillor Hamley.
Another quick meeting, Your Worship, this time on October 13th. We are recommending that Council remove the no parking during school hours designation from the traffic bylaws surrounding the former Bayview School, as that is no longer a public school. And And we also, a new crosswalk was installed across from Notre Dame School. And I'll move those minutes.
Good, thank you. Any questions? Seeing none, all in favor? That is carried. So that gets us through our committee reports. Down to number 15, we have no matters which were postponed. We have no matters of which notice was previously given, no motions that notice was previously given. Discussion of additional business. I have Councillor Tamming with the 2 items.
I spoke with a developer, local developer, well-known in town, very competent individual. And I'm pleased to say that subject to court approval by application of the receiver, the Sydenham looks to have a new owner. And that is great news for the residents there. It's great news for the downtown core. These things can often take 5, 6, or even more years to wind their way through the system. And I think it's just excellent news for the downtown. And I just wanted to bring that to the city's attention. I also, second thing, I just want to give a plug. For $20, you can buy one of the most gorgeous calendars, and it's put out by the Tom. It consists of 12 paintings, not originals, but copies from our own collection, and it's all the group of 7. It's a stunning collection of photos, and I urge people to use their, to basically use these in place of what they might otherwise give colleagues or peers or children. And you can find these calendars at the Tom Thompson Gallery, online, DC Tailors, Heartwood Home, Bear Birch, Georgia Bay Center for the Art, all things tea, gray roots, and photo art. So we just urge people, there's 1,000 of them, there's lots, and please let's move these through the community as a real celebration and fundraiser of the Tom. Thank you.
Do you want to hit in the auction while you're going?
No. Oh, yeah. There is also an auction starting up towards the end of this week. We are very excited at the thought that we could actually raise some coin. Go to the website. It's a bit of an interesting way we're doing it, but it's online. And pull out your virtual wallet, so to speak. It doesn't take place over one day. It's many days. But there's local artists. There's artists that have been featured at the Tom. There's a lot of good quality stuff, and I urge you to get online and find out about it. Thank you, Your Worship, for reminding me.
Thank you. Councillor Thomas.
Thanks, Your Worship. We had a report earlier this evening about changes to Remembrance Day, and you know, by now probably most people in the community know that the Legion has decided that it cannot sell poppies this year because of the COVID regulations. There are boxes around town, but there's no active sales going on with Legion volunteers. The funds the Legion raises from the poppy sales are a fairly important source of revenue for the Legion. It helps them with their programming year round. And I'd like to make a motion tonight that the city make a donation to the Legion in lieu of poppy sales to assist it with its programming for the coming year. It's an important organization in the community, and I really think it needs to be supported. Now, given the timing and the fact that I should have a notice of motion, I know that I first would like to make a motion that we waive the notification requirements so that we can get a motion on the table about the poppies. And I might be going about it backwards. Okay. I know the clerks love it when we do this.
So switch direction, motion and then notice to waive, or notice to waive and then?
Notice to waive first, please.
Okay, so first is the notice to waive, motion to waive notice of motion. I think we all understand that. Any questions? All in favor? That's carried. Next is the motion.
Thanks, Your Worship. The amount that was quoted in the newspaper was over $40,000 the Legion would be short this year for its programming. I'm not going to suggest that we cover that shortfall by any means. Although we did get some money back tonight, it seems to me that we could probably, no, anyway. I would like to make a motion that the city donate $5,000 to the Legion Poppy Fund.
Good, thank you. Discussion, Councillor Hamley.
Just a question for the Director of Corporate Services. Because of COVID-19, counselors haven't been able to go to conferences and local events. So there's a bit of money sitting there. I'm just wondering how much we have in our council expense account.
I predict about a $6,500 surplus in that account this year.
Okay. Would the counselor accept a friendly amendment that we use the council expense fund to pay for that?
Well, I guess we'll have to forego the big party. Oh, sorry, I wasn't supposed to say that. Yes, of course. Absolutely great idea. Thank you.
Before I go too much further, I want to speak to this. I'm going to ask Councillor Gregg to take the chair.
Anybody else want to speak before Mayor Body? Mayor Body?
Thank you. I'm switching seats so I can vote against this. I cannot support this whatsoever. Years ago, the city used to give out grants, and we eliminated that, so we weren't giving grants and opening up the door for various people to come in. There are, I think, 2 grants that we still give. One is to the Legion, and one is to maybe the Festival of Northern Lights. I'm not sure if there's another one. We don't give to Summer Folk. We don't give to any other charities. And once you start opening up that door, you've got to have a budget to start to pick that out of. And the door opens. I very much appreciate what the Legion does in this town. That money specifically goes to supporting veterans and the programs that the Legion offers for veterans. I think that's important. I very much encourage people in the community to dig into their pocket, but I don't think we should be doing this because what's next after that? Plucking something out of the blue and passing a motion to waive notice without time to think about it, to spend $5,000 or $6,000. It's still taxpayers' money on something specific. It is important in our community, but so is Heart and Stroke. So is. There's a lot of other groups. I just don't think this is appropriate. So I'm switching so I can vote against it. Thanks.
Are there any other comments? And we'll go to Kate.
I might just clarify, the city used to offer a grant in lieu of property taxes to the Legion when the Legion was taxable. As of this year, the Legion is not taxable anymore, so we no longer provide that grant in lieu.
When did that change?
This year. Yes.
Let's go back to Councillor Hamley.
I just want to counter that point. We just had the Festival of Northern Lights in, and they were talking about the $15,000 to $40,000 grant that we give them each year. We don't get a lot of inputs to help organizations during COVID. The Legion is almost entirely dependent upon the Poppy campaign, and I can almost guarantee that the Poppy campaign is going to be down. So that's why I'll be supporting the motion.
Councillor Merton.
Through the chair. I think this raises the issue about fairness and applying principles equally across a variety of organizations. I'm wondering if it would be appropriate to consider how a council supports those who are reliant on donations so that we can have a standardized approach for requests or situations that may come to us. There are other organizations who are not able to do the fundraising and are in equally distressed situations. As a new counselor, I'm not sure if this has come up before and that, but certainly this, we need to be fair. We need to apply the same principles because other requests may come forward. And how do we do that? So it's a request for consideration for further discussion regarding this.
Thanks, Councillor Merton. Councillor Thomas.
Well, I think there is a standardized approach. And as the mayor pointed out, many years ago, the city did have grants night. I spent many a long grants nights here watching the city give out money to organizations who came with their hats in their hands. You know, the community foundation is the way the city chose to fund groups and organizations, and I totally agree with that as a process. In this case, no approach was made. Nobody approached me and asked for anything. This is my idea and my idea alone. I looked at the Legion as a community organization that really does good work in the community and probably could use a hand at this time of year. Tonight comes in close to the Poppy campaign. Remembrance Day is next week, and that's why I brought it up. I certainly appreciate the mayor's comments, but these are not normal times. People are making exceptions and doing things they can to help out everywhere in our community. And that was the intent behind my motion. And I'll just ask you to call the question.
I'll ask for a recorded vote.
You ready? Mr. Clerk?
Councillor Dodd,
In favor.
Councillor Hanley,
In favor.
Councillor Kepke,
In favor?
Councillor Merton,
In favor.
Councillor Tamming,
In favor?
Councillor Thomas,
In favor?
Mayor Body,
Opposed?
Councillor Gregg.
In favor.
The resolution is carried with 7 in favor and 1 opposed.
Okay, so that was your one item. Campaign. On my list, we have one more week of Music at the Market. Go to musicatthemarket.ca. So Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, 12 until 2 p.m. I understand it's supposed to be warm towards the end of this week, so that's good. Come downtown, buy your lunch, go and hang out and hear some good music. Last Friday, I was able to attend an announcement at St. Mary's. The Bruce Gray Catholic Board of Education was provided with $19.7 million to expand St. Mary's School. This is important for our community. They are over capacity there and have a lot of trailers out the back. So this is an ability to upgrade their school and fill that capacity of what's already needed, plus probably a little bit more. I do note while we were there, there's lots of kids using the picnic tables that are the city's picnic tables. The principal there, Mike Kirby, contacted us to ask if they could borrow the city's picnic tables and move them up there for the kids to use outside. It's become a real community thing, like I guess the tables in the lunchroom would be. I note further that we have committee vacancies. Deadline is November 20th. So if you're out there and you think we make bad decisions and you want to be part of it, or perhaps you're thinking about running for council at some point in the future, it's a good idea to try and get on a city committee and get some experience and understand kind of how the process is. Our deadline is November 20th. You can go to owensound.ca. Under news, look for an item there for committee vacancies. Everything else has been covered. So we're down to number 18, committee that the motion that the committee of the whole rise and report.
Yes, moved by myself that the committee of the whole rise and report.
All in favor? That's carried. Now in the formal session, motion to adopt.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Dodd, that the action taken in committee of the whole in considering public meetings, deputations, and presentations, public question period, matters arising from correspondence, reports of city staff, consent agenda, committee minutes, matters postponed, motions for which notice was previously given, and additional business be confirmed by this council.
All in favor? That is carried. Do we have any notices of motion being given tonight? Seeing none. Bylaws?
Through your worship, the bylaws listed for approval on tonight's agenda include the confirmatory bylaw and a bylaw to execute an agreement with Paymentis Corporation respecting electronic bill payment services.
Great, thank you. Councillor Thomas.
Moved by myself that bylaws number 2021-21 and 2021-22 be passed and enacted.
And all in favor? That is carried. So I'm looking at the clock. It is 8:54. 8:54 as the meeting ends. Might be some people that are interested in that. We've completed all our business for tonight, so we're adjourned. Thanks, everybody.